Hi everyone, this is step 7 in M.A.S.T methodology. Hopefully you've been able to go through all of the other videos, especially the ones in the drafting section, and you started with the overview of all 8 steps. Step 7 is keyword check. This is critical for the integrity of Scripture. Okay, and so what does that mean? Isn't all the steps critical? Of course they are. Every single one of them is. Each one of them do something differently. So this one is looking specifically at the words that are held for the meaning basis of Scripture. Okay, there are theological words that are for Scripture alone. Okay, and so there's many different words that are in Scripture that are specific to Scripture. These could be names of God, for example. These could be names of people. These could be names of things that are important, but it's also terms. These terms could be like spirit. These terms could be prophet or angel or demon. All of those things have different meanings across languages that we have to be sure are captured accurately. Some languages that I've seen have a combination of words that mean the same thing when you start mixing things. For example, there was a language that I encountered and they had one word that covered angel and prophet and messenger, and I thought that's really not going to work. We need different words, or we need something descriptive in that. So I want to talk about 2 things in this. One is, how is keyword checking done? And then second is, what are some things that you might discover? First thing in keyword checking is I like to do this in a 2-step process. Okay, step number 1 is I want a partner that is going to go through and circle every single word that is of importance in that. Okay, this is not every single word. Okay, and so what this is these are the theological words of meaning. Okay, spirit, demon, holy, prophet, messenger, when it's in terms of who delivers a message for God, things like that need to be circled in a chapter. The second set of words are the words of high importance. Okay, when it talks about things that if it were taken out, it would lose its meaning in there. Okay, not every single word in a sentence would lose its meaning in different languages. Okay, and so what you want to look for is, I went to the store to buy some milk. What are the important words in there for its meaning? Store, went, milk, buy. Those 4 words are high importance. There's nothing theological in there, but they do explain what's going on, and they need to be in there, and they need to be present. Okay, and so I have everybody circle those words as well. The first step in that is asking simply, is it there? Why would I do this in the first step? Is it there? Because if they're missing a lot of things, they didn't do something properly in steps 5 and 6. And you want to make sure that it is there. You don't want to spend a lot of time on the first 5 words and work through those words and then find out they're missing the next 6 words. You've just spent 30 minutes on doing keyword checking, and you don't want to do that if they're not doing the steps properly. So number 1, is it there? If they're all there, or 2 or 3 are missing out of a chapter, you have a pretty good chapter coming down the pipeline for step 7 and 8. If they're missing 5, 6, 7, 8 key words, they need to go back and they need to look at some things. So number 1, are they there? Number 2, what is the meaning behind these words? Now, you don't have to do it every single time the word repeats. You have to do it for the first time that word shows up in the chapter. So, for example, the word spirit. If the word spirit shows up, what kind of spirit is it? It should match the definition of that source text and the proper word of spirit. Okay, other examples that could happen are meat versus flesh. Okay, for example, I might say meat, and they might say a word for flesh. Is that okay? Well, then we have to look at some source text, and we have to dig a little deeper into that. And I've actually seen that one happen. Okay, and so then what if somebody gets to a word and they say, it doesn't exist in my language? It may have gotten to that point in keyword check, and so you have some choices in there. And so this is a common question I've seen in many projects around the world. What if that word doesn't exist? You have 3 choices primarily. The first one is they can adapt a word from the national language. And I've seen that happen. That's okay. Okay, we do that in English as well. Okay, but we don't always want to do that. We want to make it a special word. So another option is they could create a word. The problem is you have to teach that word, and so they may not know what it is. The third option, though, is they could create a short definition or description of that word. But then you have to have problems of consistency where you have to have that show up every time that word shows up as well. So you have to teach it to the translation group that's out there. That's a common thing though for keywords that you want to make sure is something that they have options to do so that they do it well and they do it consistently throughout Scripture. That's pretty much the keyword check. This one sets it up. There's two things happening in steps 7 and 8. Step 7 is giving the small word meaning, and step 8 is now broadening it back out, saying contextual meaning. So some people have said, can't we combine step 7 and 8 and do it all together? No, do not do that, because you want to focus on words and the meaning of words. I'm upholding the integrity of those words, getting good definitions. And now I'm coming in and I'm upholding context in there. When you start doing it with context and then mixing the keywords in, one of those gets sacrificed, and it's usually keywords, and they start mushing up the context of that. And an example is spirit, where they say, oh yeah, it fits in the context. And remember, you're doing verse by verse readings of that, and so you might be missing the actual context of what's happening. An example is when it talks about dead, dead, and dead in Scripture. There's 3 different forms of dead. And so one of those could be physical dead, and one of those could be spiritually dead. One of those could be inaction. Okay, if those skip across different verses, but in the context of that, you have the definition, and it translates differently, keyword check is where you needed to do that, not in context for step 8. So you need both separately. And please do those steps separately so they can each function doing what they're doing. I hope you're seeing all of the videos together. This is step 7. Please review steps 5 and 6 in context of checking, but also review all the steps together, and for sure connect this to step 8 to see the differences of what happens in those two. Thank you very much.